Welcome to The Business That Pays with Adam Tolliver from Artisan Financial Strategies, where we mind the business that pays you. In this podcast, we empower successful families and business owners to make informed decisions about their finances through courageous conversations. Through his expertise as a practicing investment advisor representative with Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor, Adam teaches you how to create a wealth ecosystem by combining a practical technical framework with your personal, family, and community values. Join us for this journey where Adam normalizes sustainable wealth building and gives you the keys to make courageous, proactive financial decisions.
In the last episode of his podcast, The Business That Pays, Adam Tolliver talked about the challenges business owners face when looking to the future and stepping away from the company they created. Adam is with Artisan Financial Strategies, and in this episode, he takes that a step further to the actual process of preparing for change. I'm Patrice Sikora. Adam, you use a defined process, so where do you start in this?
Whenever we're starting with a large end goal in mind, one of the first things that we have to do is have a solid understanding of where we currently are. So we start in this process with business owners with what we call a exit readiness assessment. And so this is critical to getting off on the right foot. So we understand what steps need to be taken. We want to try to quantify what the business's current value is, both, standalone as a hard number, like how much if you were going to sell your business, or if you're trying to determine what value, what percentage of your personal balance sheet and wealth this business takes up, what is it worth, right? Mm-hmm. But then we also want to understand that within the context of your industry. So, just to throw a number out there, if your business is worth $2 million, that might sound great. But we want to know in the context of other businesses in your industry. So if we're talking about, for a simple example, a doctor's office or a dentist office, what are the other doctor's office and dentist offices that are comparable in size to yours worth? What are the ones that are in your locale worth? And if there's a gap there, how do we reasonably close that gap? Or where are you on the spectrum? So are you on the lower end as far as the value of your business? Are you on the higher end? And then if so, that gives us an idea of what needs to be done to move you closer to the more ideal value or the greater value that you can accomplish for your business.
So it's kind of like getting a comparable price within the real estate industry.
Exactly.
Okay. So you've done that, and now you find, all right, maybe you're middling, you're doing okay. What else do you have to look for?
So we're looking at what are the areas of risk for your business that lower the value. And that can vary again by industry, but it may be you're a business who does a lot of revenue, but you get 80% of your business from one client. And so, of course, at that point, if anything changes for that client, your business is now dependent and no longer as valuable because you either lost a client or the client went out of business. So that's something that can hurt the value of your business. It may be a matter of internal processes, whatever it might be. So we want to figure out what those things are. What type of strategic planning do we need to do to shore up these sort of key areas in your business along the lines of intellectual capital, human capital, processes and systems? What are the things in your business that are maybe a little lopsided? And one of the things that we talked about on the last episode is a lot of small to mid-sized businesses are overly dependent on the business owner because they have the relationship capital with the clients. They have the skill and the know-how, but don't necessarily have the systems that help translate it to the other employees in the business. And so if the business owner is not there, then that same value doesn't exist.
But that would seem to me to be a very difficult issue to change.
It can be, but that's part of what this process is about, is starting to flesh that out and have the conversations necessary to say, how do we take what you know how to do, examine the relationships that you have internally and externally, and how do we mine more relationships out of that to tease out and spread out the risk. So now you don't have, one client who's doing 80%, but maybe you can find a second comparable client, and of course you may not ever find anyone who replaces that whale of a client that you have. But if you can diversify enough and figure out other streams of revenue that can start to chip away at that dominance in your revenue streams, then you can have a better shot of creating sustainable value that a third party won't look at and say, well, if I buy this business from you and this whale of a client you have no longer wants to do business with us because you're not involved, what type of value does that leave me with?
Is it hard to convince the business owner who's got these relationships to spread it out with other people?
Sometimes there is, but the beauty of this process is that it is both quantitative and qualitative. So there are some good hard numbers to look at to say, based on this relationship and your business being dependent on it, this is the difference in value and what that means for you and your family at some point when you want to exit. Now, of course, people can be stubborn, and what's difficult is that in these conversations, a lot of my colleagues will call this the ugly baby syndrome, where every baby is beautiful and precious and unique, and most especially to the parents of that baby. And as a business owner, your business is your baby, and you are inviting someone in to take a look under the hood and troubleshoot and critique what you've been doing. And that's not always a very comfortable thing. But what we want to do is make it a collaborative process. And we want to have those tough conversations, but also be able to put hard numbers and data. So if we're comparing where your business is in value to 5 or 6 other companies that are comparable in size, in industry, and locale, recent transactions, so recent businesses that were sold, and if you can see the significant gap there and what the common denominators are, then people will typically start to move along the way. But it's very dependent on relationships and trust. And that is part of my responsibility as an advisor, working with anyone, any client on the personal or the business side to help them understand that I have their best interest in mind, and also creating as much transparency as possible in the process so that they're not looking at me weird, like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? It's all laid out right there, and we both took the steps along the way together.
All right, to this point, I have not heard you talk once about really dollars and financial planning. Tell me about that.
Yes. So the other thing that we're doing in this discover phase, we've taken care of the business valuation. We also want to get a strong understanding for the basic financial planning needs for the client and their family. And this is about discovering what is the wealth gap. So you've got personal assets that you've saved and accumulated outside of your business. And then you've got the business asset, which, as we've discussed, tends to take up the vast majority of most business owners' balance sheet.
Right.
When you add those together, you have a total wealth number. But we want to identify, okay, in order for you to sustain the type of lifestyle that you'd like to sustain if you were to step away from the business, and in order for your family to feel whole and for you to realize the goals that you have for them, what's the gap between the current wealth number and what you would get, what you would need in order to meet that goal if you sold your business? And so at that point, we can start to make assessments as far as how do we close that gap. The second thing that we're looking at in there is all about things like titling and estate planning, figuring out where are the soft spots, just like a normal financial planning engagement in our assess, clarify, and track process. So we're doing comprehensive financial planning in tandem with this exit planning review and strategy.
So, yeah, you just mentioned strategy. That's the first time I think I've really thought about that too. Tell me about when you decide there is a need for strategic planning, and what do you do?
So strategic planning is going to vary based on business and where they are after that initial assessment. Exit planning is something that requires a team. There really rarely will you find one business service professional, whether it's a financial planner, a valuation expert, an accountant, a business advisor, who can help walk you through this entire process together. And so I work with a team of very strong, competent professionals. And we have this process that we all agree on and we understand. So we're collaborating. And if we're taking strategic steps, that's going to take us into the prepare phase, where we're focusing on things like de-risking your business to increase the value, improving processes and systems, and increasing the transferability of the value. So if you've got value, sort of like we were just talking about, that it's valuable because you are in the business and because of your relationships and your personal acumen and capital. How do we make it so that that value is retained in the business and transferable, whether it's transferred internally to an employee or a family member, or if it's sold externally?
What kind of a time frame are we talking here for both the discover phase, and then if you see that there are gaps that have to be dealt with, what time frame do you give yourself to do that?
So in the discover phase, that's relatively quick. That's that initial assessment and taking the first steps. We're on a 90-day track where we're going to come away with 5 action items for the business and 5 action items for the personal and financial side of things. And so that part is relatively quick. And once we move into prepare, we're doing things in a 90-day chunk, but that's going to vary based on the business. And I know we're going to talk about prepare in that phase in just a second. But overall, if you're going into it on average, this process is between 2 and 5 years. So we're looking at a 2 to 5 year window, because the goal of the exit planning process is not to rush anyone to the finish line to say, I'm definitely about to exit my business. It's to start to implement a value acceleration process with the goal of increasing the enterprise value of the business and running the business in a way that is meant to drive its value to its maximum potential. And we're running on a 90-day cycle once we get into prepare, because at the end of each cycle, we're going to make a decision. Do we want to continue to grow the business and grow the value, or do we want to exit now?
All right, you're talking prepare now, the prepare stage. Is this more important than discover, or tell me about the importance of this part?
So I try my best not to place any additional emphasis on one portion of the plan than the other, but prepare is absolutely where the crux of the legwork is done. In the prepare phase, we are taking strategic action within the business to start to de-risk. So we want to, have plans for unplanned events, have plans for insurance, contingency planning, backup plans, handling all of those things. We also want to look at what type of strategic and non-strategic enhancements can be made in the business. How are we setting goals and developing strategy for the business? What type of efficiency do we have within the company? What type of culture and talent development is there? Because all of these things are what are going to make the value of the enterprise increase for a third party who may want to purchase your business.
Is this a one-time thing, or do you have to keep going back again and reviewing?
It is a repetitive cycle. So we run on a 90-day track. We set up a meeting cadence, and we are reviewing how these processes are improving or working and what fits and what doesn't on a constant basis to drive the results. And it is something that takes getting used to in running a business, but the value and the difference in value from the start and once we go through this process is immense.
How do your business clients accept this? Are they willing to listen to you?
Usually by this time, we've built up a rapport. We've got strong proof of credibility, and we've shown enough competence. And what's important here as advisors, and at this point, we've brought in additional help. So I'm not as hands-on in this process, but we're working with a business consultant to focus on key areas like management development and customer diversification, like we were talking about earlier. What type of metrics and dashboards are we using internally to track our progress? We're working with a CPA to look at financial history and projection. So we're using subject matter experts in all these areas to tighten up these systems and also build up the proof, the documentation of the progress. And as we're building that proof, credibility continues to get reinforced with the business owner. But also, just as importantly, and really more important, is that we're building proof for outside eyes to say this is what we're worth.
Right, right. All right, let's go back again. We had in Discover, we had personal and financial planning considerations. In Prepare, I would expect us to also have that.
That is correct. And so in this phase, we are moving on to some of the more complex and I would say sticky issues. We discussed at the end of the last episode, understanding the conversations between family members, who and how we're positioning. And so we're identifying like who are the key people inside of this business that I may want to pass this to. And if I do, how does that impact my family if I have family in the business? Is it a family member? Is it a key employee who's not related to me? And what does that mean for the value that I need to extract for, my wife, my children, my husband, whoever it might be? And so we are always working on the financial plan in tandem. And then the other thing that we're working on, as you know, we've also discussed, is the personal plan. What do you want to do? Because there is some dissatisfaction that may come, and it's rather common for people who step away from their business if they've been in it for a very long time.
Right.
And so we don't want to leave it to chance and just say, oh, we can do whatever we want. That's fine. But if you don't know what you're going to do, that gets old pretty quick. And I think a lot of people who have retired, whether they've sold a business or they've just retired from a 9 to 5, can tell you like, it feels nice. But after a while, if you don't have anything to do, it can get a little lonely. It can get a little frustrating. It can get a little sad.
It can get a little stressful too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the key areas in this Prepare phase that might be addressed when it comes to business improvements?
Yep. So in business improvement, again, we're thinking about customer diversification. We're thinking about our financial history and projection. So how do our books reflect what's actually happening in the business? And if you talk to any accountant, they will tell you how frequent they will come across a business that is running well and is profitable, but their books, their financial statements, their balance sheet, their statement of cash flows are not reflective or organized in a way that truly reflect that value. And it makes it difficult to try to pivot and sell at some point. So we're revamping all of those systems and processes to try to be more accurate and make it so that your value is actually being communicated well.
Now we're down to a really hard category. We've done Discover, we've done Prepare. The business owner can, let's go find out about this stuff. Let's discover. We could prepare, we'll think about it. But then comes the time to actually decide.
Yes.
And this has got to be tough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the decision that you're making, again, is, okay, I'm here. I feel better about where we are as far as the business goes. The value of the business has increased, and I feel confident in my numbers. I have a much stronger understanding of what I'm going to need financially in my personal life to sustain my lifestyle and feel like I've done my family justice financially.
Yeah.
I have a good understanding of what I want to do once I'm done working. But what if I'm not done working? What if I don't want to hand it off right now? And so you're deciding, do I continue to grow the business and stay on the same track of just continuing to build and drive that value up? So we just start that prepare phase all over again, go through the 90-day cycle and continue to measure and improve. Or do I want to decide that it's time for me to go, that I'm ready to exit the business? And what does that look like?
Or maybe not exit completely?
Right. Absolutely. Where you may take more of a hands-off approach. Um, you're still involved, but you dial it back. Maybe you dial it back 50%. Maybe you you introduce, stronger ownership share for a second in command or something like that to begin a transition phase that takes a little time just for your comfort and for the sake of the business. So it could look a few different ways.
Is there a difference to the way you approach a transfer of the business to someone who is a family member or inside the business versus someone who is a complete outsider, may know the business, but
Mhm.
comes from the outside?
Yes. So the difference between an inside transfer and an outside transfer.
Okay.
You may have an intergenerational transfer. So that could be to your children or to a niece or a nephew, someone who is in your family, has been in the business and knows the business, and you feel confident that they can do what needs to be done in order to keep running it. You may have a management buyout, which same principle, but this isn't inside of the family. So you're talking about someone who, I mean, let's be frank, if you're in business with someone and have been with people for a long time, you may consider them to be family, but they
Right.
may not be that. They may just be someone who came on recently, or within the last 5 years or so, and are just really strong and know the business, and they may want to buy it from you. You may give them first dibs as opposed to going outside. So you have a management buyout arrangement, and what that may look like. And that's very similar to selling to existing partners, which is our next option for an inside transfer. Selling to existing partners just means that in this business, you've already got shares of ownership with certain people, and you're just going to sell your share of ownership to the existing partners. And then selling to employees, which may include an employee stock purchase plan,
Mhm.
where you're dispersing the value of the business to the employees through stock.
Do the business owners that you have dealt with prefer an internal option to an external option?
That varies, and it varies based on typically the size of the company, whether or not family is involved, and oftentimes by industry. So some industries are just a little bit better suited for an outside transfer versus an inside transfer. Um,
For example, there.
so like small family restaurants are better
Okay.
suited for inside. Companies in manufacturing or companies in professional services tend to be better suited for outside. So like a doctor's office or a physical therapist office, where there may be a single practitioner or a few practitioners there, but everyone sort of came of age and retired around the same time, and there's no second generation of doctors or physicians to take over the office. So a healthcare management organization may purchase and hire new doctors.
Mm.
So it varies, and typically it's based on those two factors: the size of the company, well, three factors: the size of the company, whether or not family's involved, and then the industry, and just depending on whether or not that industry is better suited for one or the other.
All right. Now, I want folks to remember this is part 2 of a series here on exiting your business. So remember to go back and check out part 1, which is the episode just before this one. Here we've discussed discover, prepare, and decide. Adam, bring it all together for me.
Sure. So ultimately, when we're looking at this process, again, I have to stress that paying attention to exit planning and really the value acceleration of your enterprise is not a declaration of, I am ready to leave my business today.
Mhm.
One of the things that we discussed in the last episode is that very many business exits are not done voluntarily. There's some sort of outside factor that forces that decision on someone. And so this process is really all about, how do we reorient our thinking and the way that we operate as a business and personally, so that we are better positioned to be able to exit our business on our best terms. And so we may not be able to control whether or not we do it on our own terms, meaning exactly when we want to, but we can prepare and position ourselves to be in a place where we do it on the best terms possible, where we're protecting our interests personally and financially for ourselves and for our family, and where we are in a position to keep what we've built thriving without us.
And this can be done with any size business, correct? It doesn't have to be a mid-sized business. A small business, a family business, as you've been mentioning, can benefit from this.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And the process itself, it can scale down and scale up in complexity. And it just depends on the needs of the client, the needs of the business owner and their family.
All right, Adam Tolliver of Artisan Financial Strategies, thank you so much. Everyone, take a long view on your business's future. And be sure to subscribe to Adam's podcast, The Business That Pays, so you know when new episodes are available. You can also share with the share button. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to Business That Pays. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Artisan Financial Strategies or Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial professional provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment strategies.
Adam Tolliver, registered representative, offering securities through New York Life Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a licensed insurance agency, 1125 Cambridge Square, Suite C, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009, 404-210-9311. Financial advisor offering investment advisory services through Eagle Strategies LLC, a registered investment advisor. New York Life Securities LLC and Eagle Strategies LLC are New York Life companies. Artisan Financial Strategies LLC is not owned or operated by New York Life Securities LLC or its affiliates. Neither Artisan Financial Strategies LLC nor its advisors provide tax, legal, or accounting advice.